Hey guys, welcome to the daily analysis for today, Tuesday the 6th, and also Election Day in the United States. Obviously, a lot going on over here, but that certainly doesn't stop the markets from moving. So today we're going to take a look at some of the major pairs. I want to look at some of the euro crosses and just show you how the euro has moved against different pairs. One thing you'll notice is that against like the dollar, for instance, it's actually building a base and moving slightly up today. But against other pairs like the Australian dollar and the Canadian dollar, the euro has actually fallen quite substantially. So the euro is becoming more of a neutral currency, and other pairs are changing strengths. And so we'll talk about that in a little more detail, and I'll give you an idea of what I'm expecting based on those other currencies gaining strength or losing strength, depending on the scenario. And hopefully we'll come out with some great opportunities to trade over not only today, but the next few days and even the next few weeks. All right, before we jump into that, let's take a look at our news so we know what may affect the things that we're going to be talking about during the technical analysis. All right, guys, so as far as tomorrow is concerned, there's some London news for the Swiss, which is going to be both foreign currency reserves and CPI. So major Swiss news at 3 and 3:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, which we'll pay attention to. And then later on in the afternoon, we hit unemployment and employment change on the New Zealand dollar. So those should be two pretty major events, followed by the odd employment change and unemployment rate. So for the New Zealand dollar and the Australian dollar tomorrow, we should have some major moves based on those announcements. Of course, if they're very similar to what's expected, we won't get those major moves. But often anything with employment involved creates quite a buzz in the market and makes things move. Notice that there is no US dollar red tag news tomorrow. The only thing that we have kind of in the New York session is some orange tag and some later news, but there's also that tentative euro announcement that we'll want to keep an eye on. Okay, guys, so that's the major stuff going on tomorrow. Again, a lot of this are on pairs that we don't trade as much. Like our three major pairs that we probably trade are the euro, pound, and US dollar, and none of those have major news. So that should, add a little more clarity to those three currencies when we talk today. Let's get into our terms, and then I'll show you those currencies on the technical side of things to let you know what I'm thinking. Alright guys, and these are our terms, which basically say that we're not registered or licensed to provide investment advice, and that the daily analysis is purely for your education, and it is not a way of us telling you how to invest your hard-earned money. Alright, if you need to read through those very carefully, please go ahead and do that. You can pause the video, and I'm going to go ahead and get into the charts now. Alright guys, so the first thing that we're looking at here is the euro dollar, and as I mentioned, the euro has actually built a very small base and made some bullish ground today, as you can see here. Now, one thing to note is that although we are building a base, that this is actually not a base off any kind of major level. If you draw a line from where it broke through, you can see that it hasn't gotten up to the area yet. At best, it's looking to retest that area, but certainly not closing above it at this point. And if we pay attention to our trend line right here, you can see that it hasn't quite touched that on this bounce. So right now, I would say that there's not a major level that this is bouncing off, which doesn't give me any type of expectation for the euro to continue in the upward move. Now, this retrace might continue for a few bars, or a very small consistent moving, but it doesn't look like it's launching off a strong resistance or support level like it wants to go up and either test this trend line or even come back to test this area. So what I'm expecting from the euro dollar is, if this moves sideways or slightly up or whatever it does, for it to continue eventually down back toward this trend line. So perhaps we'll get a signal of that tomorrow or the next day or a week from now. But either way, whenever this small up move finishes out, I'm expecting price to move back in line with the trend, and we'll see how that works out. As of right now, I would say that this is a waiting pair, and there's not an obvious move waiting to happen on the euro dollar right now. Let's check the pound dollar to see if it's a similar story. And what you'll immediately notice about the pound dollar is that this trend is continuing, or it appears to be continuing to turn back up and get less and less steep and less trend oriented. So for instance, even though this is a move down and it bounced off the trend line and we're still heading down overall, you can see that the lows of each bounce to the downside at least based on the past 3 lows before we got a bounce, are showing that price is actually rounding back up and looking to get, maybe even a potential break of this trend line in the near future. It's only a matter of time for this to round up before it can actually break through that trend line and start moving back up. As of right now, it's looking like this base is building a little bit higher than our previous low, which again supports that claim of it rolling up and eventually heading to the upside. However, again, this is not like an incredible level that we've been keeping our eye on, so this little inside bar doesn't have a lot of authority. As far as we know, tomorrow there could be another bearish bar that actually does make a lower low and increases this downtrend that we've been talking about. So until this actually bounces back up to the trend line again and tests this again, that idea of price rounding up is not actually valid. So though that's what it appears to look like based on this, what we have right now, the verdict is certainly not made up on the pound dollar. Now, if you're thinking that it is made up, that the verdict is here, and that obviously this thing is starting to turn toward a bullish momentum-filled pair, then this might be a good long. It's an inside bar. It is a base near the previous low. However, my personal opinion is that we need to wait for this to come back up and test this trend line, and then I'll know that this really is legitimate in terms of turning back to the upside. And any other time that it makes a base, if it makes a base next time right here, then I will go long because I'll have more evidence based on the previous times that it's done so. Okay, so I know this is boring to talk about, but it just seems like the majority of the pairs are ones that you need to wait for that better entry. And to be honest, that's basically how it should always be. If you're a Forex trader, some people may make a lot of trades in a given day or a given week. But for the general investor who wants to just try to earn a net profit in trading, fewer trades is probably better most of the time. So many times you'll have 0 trades in a given day. When you go over the analysis like this at the end of the day, even sometimes you may have 0 trades in a week. And I think that most Forex traders don't like that, but that's kind of a mentality that we have that I believe is incorrect. If you look at many of the very successful investors like Warren Buffett, for instance, they're not in the market trading every day looking at setups. They're longer-term investors who only take setups or trade entries into the market when things follow all of the parameters and really line up for what they would call a perfect setup. Now, again, I would probably conclude that there is no such thing as a perfect setup, but still you want to take the most high probability setups that you can possibly find in the market. And if that's your criteria, then you're not going to get setups every single day, and that's just part of trading. Okay, so that, you hear me say that about waiting to see how things play out so often, and that's why, because I don't believe that you should be making trades every single day. I think that you should be waiting for the crisp setups that really follow suit with a lot of different things supporting that. All right, so let's go back to this odd dollar, which is one that we've talked about a lot lately. So the odd dollar, again, is in this wedge, and one thing that I just keep driving home is that within the wedge, we have this middle area that's acting as a major level right now. And price, you can see several times right here, and again right here, has bounced off and then headed back up towards the top level here before it moved back down. And so it appears that that's what this next leg is doing as well as it bounces up. And today, because of some of that odd strength really charging up today, it made another big move toward that upper level. Okay, so let's actually zoom in and take a closer look at that. So again, this is this major level that we talked about, and here you can see the bounce, again another bounce, and now right here. And it's building somewhat of a trend line here, obviously not the most consistent trend line, but today looks like it's certainly going to close above the previous high and start continuing toward this downward wedge level that we've been talking about. So the odd is one that we talked about a lot of long potential here. Again, it's tricky to hang on to a position when you have these big reversal bars or reversal multiple bars like we have here. But for the most part, it has moved consistently upward, continuing to make higher highs. Here was an area where it struggled for quite some time before it finally just today broke the previous tail that we had up here. But because of that, it's looking like this level is broken on its way to testing this higher trend line. So one potential thing that you might want to look for tomorrow is for a pullback right back to this previous high, and then the next continuation bar towards this level. Because again, I think that this level is a pretty high impact level in this range, and it's one that price is probably going to get up to eventually. And so if you know that price is highly likely to get somewhere, obviously you want to get on board somewhere along the line before it does. And I think the odd is a perfect example of that. Now again, it's about timing and where you actually get into the market, because you want to take advantage of the best possible price and you don't want to miss it, but at the same time you don't just want to jump on just because it's moving in that direction, because that's an easy way to get yourself hurt on a given trade. So I think that perhaps the best way to play a trade like this one is to draw your previous high, wait for price to pull back into this level if it does. If it doesn't, then you're going to miss the trade very likely, which is okay. But then perhaps check on an hourly or a 4-hour or an 8-hour, whatever time frame you have confidence in, and wait for a momentum bar that appears to be pushing price back in this trend direction, and get in on the close of a bar like that shows a lot of authority, and try to ride that up again in this zone here to make your money. And remember that even with an hourly or a 4-hour or an 8-hour bar, it's likely that it's gonna shake out and move it's not going to go straight to that level. It's going to pull back and do this and then spike or something along those lines, because it's not just going to ride you right up to your target. That's just not how trading works. Okay, guys, so the odd is definitely a potential long. I think it's been a potential long for quite some time. Ever since this bounce, we've talked about long potential here. Hopefully some of you have made some money even during this ride just to where it is now. But it's looking like there's high potential for it to continue and get all the way up to this level. So again, you don't want to miss an opportunity, but at the same time you want to be very disciplined and careful about when you decide to get in, because losing trades because of poor entry mistakes is one of the worst things you can do. Okay, so keep an eye on the odd. If you're interested in taking a long, wait for that good entry. Use wise trade management and risk management, and try to ride that up to that next trend line that's going to be a major level. And speaking of major levels, the euro pound has formed a double bottom, as we can see here. It appears that it's going to at least come back to test this based on the way that it's built this small base and had very, very small bullish bars 2 days in a row here. The question again is whether it's going to come and break right back through here and continue to move in a trending direction, or if it's just going to test this before it heads right back down to make lower lows. Now again, one thing to note is that even though it broke our trend line right here, it is still in a trend, because until it actually breaks the previous low of the trend, it's still in a trend. Okay, so I want to be very clear on that. The definition of a trend is that it's still making higher highs. So right here it made a higher high, and right here it made a higher low. Excuse me, the definition is that it's making higher highs and higher lows. So right now, if this were to move up, it would still definitely be a trend, because it made a higher low, and of course it would be making a higher high if it got up to here. Right now it has not made a lower low, which means that we're still in a trend, although we have broken a trend line. So it's very important to understand the difference between just breaking a trend line and actually reversing. Right now the euro pound has not reversed, it has not broken the trend, it has simply broken the trend line that it was following before. So the slope of the move up, the slope of the trend has changed, but as of right now, the trend itself has not changed. Okay, so I just want to call your attention to that, something that I know is somewhat confusing to people, and I want to be clear on that. If you're defining a trend technically, we're still definitely in a trend on the euro pound, and a bullish trend, that is. So until it were to make a lower low by breaking through this area, we would still consider it an upward trend. Nonetheless, we're waiting for this level, and my anticipation is that it's going to react on this level, whether it reacts with a strong break or a bounce to the downward direction. I do not know, and I don't really have a sentiment either way. But either way, I think it'll provide us with a good trade opportunity, and I will certainly call your attention to that when we get there. Alrighty, let's cover one more pair here. And the last pair that I want to cover is the EUROAUD. And what I want to show you about the EUROAUD is that even though I just showed you the euro pound and the euro had gained very slight ground against that, and the euro dollar or the euro also gained very slight ground, you can see that's very bearish on the EUROAUD. As a matter of fact, if I draw my cursor, you can see that at one point it was up, or it was down, I should say, about 100 pips on this single daily bar. So a very large bearish move for the EUROAUD, which again just shows that the odd strength, like I showed you on the odd US dollar. And what's important to note, we pointed this out yesterday, that we were just breaking through the first fib level, the 2 level, which also corresponded with this previous support here, where it bounced right back up to a higher high on. Okay, so it broke through there, and we noted that yesterday. I mentioned that you might want to look for a continuation toward the 50 fib level, which we have not gotten to yet. However, I still think there's very high probability that we might at least test that tomorrow before moving up, or of course the probability, or excuse me, the possibility of breaking down. So either way, I think that price is likely to get to this 50 fib level. If you're short on the EUROAUD, and you're short by yesterday because of what we talked about, then you may want to have some profit locked in depending on your strategy, but also don't choke out the chance for this to continue downward, because the EUROAUD, of course, is a very, very bearish pair when you talk about the long term, and you don't want to choke out your opportunity to make a lot of money on it. Alright guys, well that's about it for the daily analysis. Please, as always, leave your feedback below. I would love to get that, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow.